This is Ryan Finkelstein, host of Locked On Mets, and on today's show, I was joined by Jordan Grossman for our weekly Friday farm report. We also talk a little bit about Erik Neander's extension with the Rays, who was potentially the top target out there to head up the Mets front office. Now that's off the board. We talk about who could fill that role as the Mets' new president of baseball operations. We talk about the recent promotions we've seen in the Mets farm system, as a lot of guys, including Ronnie Mauricio, have been called up. And we talk about a couple of pitching prospects you should watch out for next season.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So today we got another Friday farm report after just a rough Mets loss that we just watched here, as Marcus Stroman, another great effort, gets wasted. So let's not talk about that. Let's look at the farm system in the future, because this season is about over anyway. Before we talk about prospects, though, you had me sold on Erik Neander. I was dreaming about it. I saw the vision. We're the Dodgers of the East over here. We'll do what they did with Freeman, get Erik Neander, give him that blank check. And unfortunately, he has decided to stick it out in Tampa, got a new extension. I doubt they'll tell us how much that is. I imagine he's the only one making money in Tampa. You think that's what's going on here? That actually he decided to stay?
I mean, from what I've heard, he's like, I think I spoke about it last time we talked about Neander, is that he's really comfortable in Tampa. He's got a great situation with his family down there, and obviously he has a great job building that monstrous contender, even though he's got like a $70-80 million payroll. But yeah, I mean, he's probably making more money than most of the players on that roster. It's kind of wild, but Tampa was smart. Like, this is a top 3 executive in baseball, in my opinion, and Stu Sternberg, their owner, obviously knows that, and he realized there was pressure from other teams that want to hire him, like the Mets. There's been like rumblings that the Mets wanted to interview him last offseason, and I'm sure they would have done it again this offseason, but the Rays were smart, locked him up, promoted him from GM to president of baseball ops, and he's probably going to be there for the foreseeable future.
And that's just really unfortunate for the Mets. And now you look at some other candidates, and Mike Mayer of Mets Mirage, he reported today that Bobby Heck as a GM, Michael Hill as a president, that is an option for the Mets to try to get some more experienced executives into that front office. Are you excited about those names, or is there somebody else out there that intrigues you?
So there are worse outcomes than Hill as president and Heck as GM. I mean, Heck has been a consultant with the Rays for a few years now. So like we talked about Neander, great organization to work for. And then he also ran point on the draft for the Astros when they had guys like Springer, McCullers. So he's brought in a few good names. He's a good scout. And then Michael Hill, we don't know much about like what he could do with a big payroll, because he worked for so many years with the Miami Marlins, who are known for not spending big money outside of like the Giancarlo Stanton contract, which they inevitably traded away. But yeah, so I think Hill's a smart executive. He could be really good over here if you give him a $200 million payroll. I don't even know if he ever went over 100 with the Marlins, so it'd be interesting. But I think like the guys that I'm really locked in on now are David Stearns of the Brewers, and then Josh Burns of the Dodgers. I think Burns has worked under Andrew Friedman as a number 2 in LA for the last 6 or 7 years, so he obviously knows the ins and outs of running an organization. And then David Stearns, New York guy, he's worked with the Brewers for the last 5-6 years. Brewers ownership refuses to let him interview with other teams, just because they know how smart of an executive he is. They promoted him to president of baseball ops just because they don't want him making a lateral move elsewhere. I think the only real way that he can ever even get an interview here is if he tells Brewers ownership, listen, I'm not coming back after my contract expires. You might as well let me leave anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's my top person now, I would say. The Theo Epstein, it doesn't seem like it's likely, other than just maybe it's a frustrated Steve Cohen just throwing a bunch of money at him. And you look at what's out there, and honestly, with the idea of a Michael Hill coming in or Bobby Heck, it does make you wonder how much Zach Scott would have been in the Mets plans had the DUI not popped up. Because if you're only getting a Michael Hill, I don't know if a Michael Hill is an executive that you would have to bring him in and say, as an incentive to hire you, you can have free reign and hire whoever you want. Whereas Neander, it might have been, we're going to clear the decks and just give you the entire keys to the kingdom. I do think that there might have been a role for Scott, and I'm wondering if they revisit that this offseason. It seems like he had a lot of people who really liked him in the organization prior to all this.
Oh yeah, Scott is pretty well liked. You said in the organization, he's there's guy I know a few guys in the front office that are actually want him to stay. I mean, I don't know what's happened since the DUI situation. Like you said, things could have changed there. Opinions could have changed, but it all comes down to who they hire as president. Someone could come in and say, "Oh, Scott's a great guy. Let's give him another chance." And there could be someone else that they hire and just be like, bad apple. Let's get rid of him right away. Don't need any potential cancers in the organization. So yeah, it just all comes down to who they decide to bring in as president.
It's going to be fascinating. I mean, it's still the number one thing that has to get ironed out this offseason, and I hope that it doesn't drag out again because we saw last year having that upheaval in your front office, it just makes things harder to get all of the different things you want to accomplish unless you have that solidified early. I think we even saw it. I mean, when Brody came in, it's just I wish that they had gone through this process and instead of trying to build a team on the fly this past offseason, maybe they should have just prioritize the front office. And if the roster this year wasn't as good as it potentially could have been, at least you would have had a group going forward that you trusted. And I think as we see right now, a team wants to get under 500. I mean, what was the point of rushing and not getting that right the first time? So,
Exactly, and I think also the timing of the sale screwed them up last year.
yeah.
Not getting it approved until what was it, late October, early November. So it just and not having what was it? They tried to hire a GM for a while. They didn't get one until they got Porter in December, and then gets fired a month later. So that obviously didn't work out. But yeah, I think having a full offseason under Cohen should help things. But they, like you said, they really need to prioritize building this front office properly and making sure all the guys are in the right places.
Slow is just right if you're on vacation, a sloth, or describing QuickBooks. More like slow books. It sucks you in and slows you down with manual processes, integration difficulties, and glitchy delays that leave you scrambling for the numbers you need. Now is the time to make the switch to NetSuite. By Oracle, the number one financial system, because NetSuite gives you visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR, e-commerce, and more. It's everything you need to grow all in one place. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes and close your books in no time, no matter how big your business grows. Failing to switch to NetSuite will leave you stuck trying to make sense of your books while your competitors sprint ahead. 93% of surveyed businesses increase their visibility and control since switching to NetSuite. And right now, special financing is back. NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financing program only for those ready to switch today. So head to netsuite.com/lockedon right now to get special financing at, again, netsuite.com/lockedon. That's netsuite.com/lockedon. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. Did you know that there are so many delicious flavors to choose from? There really is something for everyone, whether it's a coconut bar, cherry barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry, orange, cookies and cream, which is my personal favorite, or German chocolate. If you haven't tried all the flavors, you can get a mixed box where you'll get 2 of each, and you can see which ones you like best. These really are protein bars that taste like candy bars. They come covered in 100% chocolate. They're soft, they're easy to chew, and they're healthy. Built Bars come low in calories, low in sugar, but they are high in protein and high in fiber. If you want to try Built Bar today, go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. What they will be in charge of is this farm system. So let's start to talk about some of the prospects. And there was a big rash of promotions recently. So I wanted to first touch on that. Who got called up? I know Mauricio was the big name. Who else ended up in Double A?
Yeah, so I want to preface this by saying that there was a bit of a COVID outbreak in Binghamton. I know they had at least 2 players test positive in the last few days. They had to cancel their series this past week. I think they haven't played in the last 4 or 5 days. So there have been guys getting called up and getting even sent down from AAA. So the big name, like you said, Ronnie Mauricio, after 100 games with High A Brooklyn, he's getting called up to Binghamton. He's hit 19 home runs, which is really impressive for a guy his age, 20 years old. The power is really starting to show, so I'm excited to see what he can do in AA. And then Mark Vientos getting sent up to AAA Syracuse. I actually spoke to his dad earlier today. He's really excited about the chance to get closer to the major leagues. Mark has had a terrific year with the bat over in Binghamton, 22 home runs in 73 games, really starting to show pop to all fields. Exit velo numbers are right where they always are, just right at the top of the charts for the Mets. So really exciting. And then also Antoine Duplantis, who was he was a mid-round pick for the Mets in 2019. Led LSU in hits for 4 years. He was there, and he had 100 hits in 98 games with High A Brooklyn this year. So he's also on his way to Binghamton, an outfielder. And then last one, outfielder Raul Barasiata. This was an interesting one. He's getting called up from the Florida Coast League, which is like a rookie ball league, and they're sending him straight up to AA.
Wow.
So that should be an interesting one to watch. So like I said, there's an issue with the amount of players they have available in Binghamton because of the COVID outbreak. But yeah, it should be interesting to see what their roster looks like once they get games going again.
To go from the FCL right up, I mean, that could simply be, hey, you're a warm body. Let's bring you up. We need some players. We'll see how it ends up shaking out for them. Got to take advantage of these opportunities. But that is very strange to get promoted, to skip not just low A and high A. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. So I'll read you his numbers in the FCL this year. He's played 39 games, slash 276, 357 on base, 528 slugging, 21 extra base hits, and 143 plate appearances. So he put up good numbers in the FCL, and he's 22 years old.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. I was going to say, I mean,
Yeah.
if he's a little bit older, I guess that could make more sense that he just showed out and like, you know what, just throw him into the fire, see what happens.
Oh yeah, I don't think they would send a 17-year-old out there.
Yeah.
That would just be complete malpractice.
Yeah, you can't do that. So let's get to the 2 pitchers that we wanted to talk about today. One of them actually a request by my dad. He said, ask Jordan about Adam Aller. So what do you think about Adam and his chances to be a guy that could factor into the Mets staff at some point next year, maybe?
Yes, this is a really interesting name. He was picked up by the Mets in 2019 in the Rule 5 draft. He wasn't really on a ton of teams' radars coming into this year as a prospect. And then all of a sudden, he starts putting together some really nice numbers over his throughout the year, but really in his last 7 to 8 starts. He was promoted to Syracuse a few weeks back. So I'll read you off his numbers from his last 7 starts, 3 in Binghamton and 4 in Syracuse. It's 41 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, which is a 0.44 ERA, only 11 walks, and then 57 strikeouts. So he's just putting up video game numbers right now with Syracuse. He's got a 0.39 ERA with them, which is just absolutely ridiculous. He's 26 years old, 6'4" guy. Fastball is around 92 to 96. Sliders around 85 to 88. He has a decent third offering with the changeup. But yeah, he's getting a ton of strikeouts right now. Like I said, 57 strikeouts over 41 innings in his last 7 starts. So putting up some really impressive numbers with Syracuse, and he could be a guy who's maybe up in the next couple of weeks if they have an issue with pitching, or as early as sometime next year, he can make the team out of camp. Who knows?
So are we talking mostly that slider is his best pitch is getting all those strikeouts with?
Yeah, slider's easily his best pitch. It's got great movement. It's, like I said, 85 to 88 miles per hour. Sometimes it can hit 89. So a really good pitch for him.
Sometimes when I'm looking at minor league numbers, the ERA is always great, but at times, I covered the Palm Beach Cardinals, I don't know, like 2 or 3 summers ago, and now I'm trying to remember the guy's name. There was a prospect that was a Met that was on the Cardinals this year. Something Casey, I can't remember his name, but bottom line, the Mets gave up on him. He went to the Cardinals, and he had this unbelievable season in Palm Beach, but I'm watching the guy pitch every day, and he was just, he was throwing strikes, he's getting by. He wasn't striking out a lot of guys, and I think now he's already out of the minors. I wish I had his name to back up what I'm saying here. But the point is, I really like when I see a prospect that's getting all the strikeouts in the minor leagues, because that shows you that they have stuff that to those prospects, those hitters, is pretty untouchable.
Oh yeah, and I'm really glad he's still doing it at Syracuse because, like you said, the competition levels. If he's older, maybe something like that. But Oller's 26, so he was doing well in Double A towards the end. He deserved the promotion, but now he's doing it in Syracuse. There's a lot of guys his age, 24, 25, 26 year olds, including other guys who could be like early 20s, even late 20s, if their careers in the majors really haven't panned out. So I'm glad he's sustaining these numbers. I obviously don't think these are numbers he's going to put up in the major leagues. He's probably at best a fifth starter type, maybe like a Corey Oswald type of arm. But getting something out of that from a Rule 5 pick is it's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we're seeing it with Tyler McGill right now. You never quite know. I don't know if McGill is going to be anything more than a 5 starter or 4 starter in his career, but he's had some really good stretches. And I think one of the things that I was talking to you about is now that pitching is becoming such a science, and you have drive line, you have all these different ways that these guys can improve in the offseason, and they're able to show how they're increasing their vertical break and how they can increase their velo. It just feels like when you're talking about hitters, it's when you're not controlling what's going on in at bat, the pitcher's in control. And so a pitcher can refine their stuff to a point where at 26, they can break out as a prospect. Is this something we're going to see a lot more of, these guys at 25, 26 finding something later on in their development and suddenly being impact pitchers?
Definitely, I think so, especially with the Mets. Under Steve Cohen, they've really prioritized the analytics and biomechanics for pitchers. I know they're in the process of building a pitching lab down in Port St. Lucie to use in spring training and also with some of their minor league arms throughout the season. Really excited about that. I think it's supposed to be ready as soon as spring 2022. So that's something that's going to help them a lot. Just tracking every single thing about a pitcher's body, like if his foot is like an inch off from where it needs to be, if his release point needs to be fixed, if his arm slot needs to be changed. Just analyzing every single part of a pitcher's body when he's in his windup and making the throw towards home plate. It's going to be really interesting to see how many more of these guys the Mets can find in the coming years. But I think it's going to be a lot more than we're used to.
Yeah, and we've seen over the years, I mean, before the Mets had no analytics, they had no technology, they weren't investing in that stuff. So these guys were getting developed by the Dan Worthens of the world, and they would just go through the farm system, and he taught you a good changeup, and you hope it works at the big league level. And if it doesn't, they end up getting rid of you. You go to the KBO, you end up with Seattle, and you're a quality starting pitcher a couple of years later, like Chris Flexen. So I think that we've seen a lot of failed pitchers come through the Mets that find success elsewhere, a lot of times with better organizations, almost like Colin McHugh, even years before that, where he goes to Houston. They're a team that tells him, hey, you should probably throw that curveball all the time. And look what ends up happening. So I think this is a really positive development that the Mets are going to have that in their minor leagues moving forward. And that can create a lot more valuable prospects that we might not see right now. It's that time of year again, as all eyes are turned towards the gridiron for the start of the football season. And as always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. Get all the updated odds, props, and contests, including online's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest and the world's largest $200,000 NFL Survivor contest, which are open now at BetOnline. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 100% welcome bonus with the promo code Locked On. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, you're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for all the other good stuff you're missing? Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before. So you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion. Get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. That's directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Another guy, Cole Gordon. What we got with the other pitcher we're going to talk about today?
So this is a Mississippi State guy. The Mets have kind of had a thing for those players down there, down south. They have Jake Mangum obviously in their system. They have JT Ginn, who's really settled in nicely to his role with the High A Brooklyn. I would probably talk about him next week. Rowdy Jordan, who they drafted this year in the 13th round, he's an outfielder. And then Cole Gordon, he's a 32nd round pick in 2019. People didn't really think much of him, obviously, coming out of college. He was a reliever. Didn't start pitching until 2016, 2017. So he was a pretty fresh arm, but he actually was a reliever coming into the system in 2019. He pitched for Columbia, was strictly a reliever. Starting this year in Binghamton, also strictly a reliever. But on June 5th, they decided to move him into the rotation, and it's really panned out pretty well. I mean, I'll read you his numbers over his last 5 starts. They're just mind-boggling. I see this is even more impressive than Aller. He's got 31 innings pitched, 0 earned runs,
Wow.
and then 6 walks and 38 strikeouts. So no earned runs over his last 5 starts. Fastball is 92 to 95 with a high spin rate, plus curveball. Doesn't really have a third pitch. But yeah, it's really impressive what he can do. 25 years old, 6'5", so big body, and he's really. I think he's still a reliever. Because without the third pitch, I just don't see a future for him in a rotation. But if he can, I mean, we talked about this with Josh Walker the other week. If the Mets can even get Cole Gordon to the major leagues, like that's a really big win for the organization as a 32nd rounder.
Yeah, no, it really is, and I'm excited to hear about all of these arms that have an opportunity either as starters or relievers. And I'm wondering, when you see Marcus Stroman go out there tonight, it's especially as the Mets lose, it's coming to mind that how many more Stroman starts are we going to see in a Mets uniform? And when you're going into the offseason and you know that you have DeGrom, you know you have Carrasco, Taijuan Walker, that's locked in. There's a good chance Syndergaard returns on the qualifying offer. So you can make an argument with McGill and some of these other arms that you don't necessarily need to give Stroman a 9-figure contract, but can you possibly still sign Stroman and just change the way you look at your rotation moving forward? And if these guys have to be, multiple inning relievers in your bullpen because they prove they're major leaguers, that could be fine too. So what do you think about that idea of whether you should just go in and sign a Marcus Stroman and all these other guys, they just have to figure it out down the road?
I think we saw this year that having depth in the minor leagues is really, really important. Not having guys like Robert Stock or Jared Eichhoff pitching meaningful games for you in June and July, that's just not something you want to have. So I really want Marcus Stroman back. He's been such an impressive guy for the Mets all year. Proved people wrong. I know people were hating on him for opting out last year and then not being what they expected him to be when he came over here in 2019. But he's 8th in ERA this year. He leads MLB in starts this season. So he's been terrific. And I don't know if I would go 9 figures for him, but I think he's someone that you can get maybe for $585, $590. And I think that's a really reasonable deal for a guy like Stroman, who is an all-star, a gold glover. And he's got a really good Mets defense behind him now. And I think that plays a big part. Having a good defense for a ground ball pitcher is important. And the Mets are one of the top 3 defenses in baseball this year. So I think keeping him is really important and just continuing to build out that depth with guys like with Aller, with guys like Gordon, guys like Josh Walker, just having good depth in Syracuse and even Binghamton.
Yeah, no, and I think you talk about the depth, and I think that that's key. And again, it's not just about your rotation. I mean, we've seen that a lot of teams like the Rays and some of the other analytically driven teams, even the Dodgers. I mean, Julio Urias spent years coming in and out of the bullpen in their rotation because they didn't have a spot for him until he would eventually carve one. But I think that that's something that the Mets have to be open-minded to, that it's okay to go in with more than 5 starters going into camp and be able to have a little more faith in that depth. I think this year we thought they had great depth, and it evaporated really quickly as Peterson, Lucchesi, Yamamoto all went down, and then suddenly it was just Eichhoff and the Eichhoff experience. Not one I want to enjoy anymore. I think I'm about done with that. So that's going to be all for this week's Farm Report. Watch to everyone where they can find your work, Jordan.
So you can find my tweets over at Mets Fan since 02. And then you can obviously find my work at Locked On Mets, running social media over there with my buddy Josh Finkelstein. And then also my Mets page on Facebook, We Are Mets Believers.
And once again, I'm always just going to put this out there because people are going to ask. Josh Finkelstein, no relation to me. Just a friend. But anyway, that was this week's Farm Report.